Welcome to my official Week 2 Top 25 rankings for the 2024 college football season. In this video, I will rank my top 25 teams heading into Week 2. And when I do these rankings, I basically do power rankings. So I'm basically ranking these teams off of how good I think they will play against each other on a neutral site field if they play tomorrow. Now let's start off at number 25. I have the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and I'm actually pretty high on this Nebraska team. They have great defensive upside, and they should have a top 20 or a top 15 defense this season. And they got a young 5-star freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola. I really like this Nebraska team, and I think they are set up to take a big leap in year 2 under Matt Rhule. And I think they can compete with just about anybody in the country. We'll see how they do against a really good Colorado offense, but I expect Nebraska to win that game by double digits. I really like this Nebraska team, and I think they're going to have a good 2024 season. At number 24, I have Georgia Tech. There's still a lot more we need to learn about this Georgia Tech team. Yes, Georgia Tech beat a top 10 Florida State team, but Florida State is nowhere near a top 10 team. It was a good win, and they are 2-0 at this point, but they have a solid test this Saturday playing at Syracuse, so I think we'll learn more about this Georgia Tech team this weekend. But for now, I do think they are a top 25 team and a pretty good team, so I do have Georgia Tech at number 24. At number 23, I have Clemson. I was already not too high on Clemson heading into this season. I had them inside my top 20 like barely, but now I have them down to 23. That offense looked very bad against Georgia, and I know Georgia's one of the top teams in the country, probably the best team in the country, but if you want to compete for an ACC championship, you have to score more than 3 points. Dabo Swinney and this Clemson team has fell off, and Dabo Swinney refusing to use the portal has been the downfall of this team. I don't trust Cade Klubnik at quarterback. They have an average offensive line, and they have unproven wide receivers. They have a really good defense, and that's why they are in the top 25, but I only have them at number 23. At number 22, I have Arizona. I still think there's more things we have to figure out about this Arizona team. It is hard to rank these teams this early in the season because Arizona's defense looked horrible, but their offense looks really good. But for now, I'm going to keep them at number 22. I do think they could be a sleeper to win the Big 12 if they figure some things out defensively, but that offense is going to go off this year with Noah Fafita and T-Mac. At number 21, I have NC State. A lot of people could have easily dropped NC State out of the top 25 after that embarrassing performance against Western Carolina in Week 1, but I'm not going to overreact to that too much because they did pull away late in the fourth quarter, and I do still have great expectations for this NC State team. I definitely dropped them. I believe I had them in my top 20, maybe top 15 last week, because I really like this NC State offense with guys like Grayson McCall, Noah Rogers, and Justin Jolie, and of course the young Kevin Concepcion. And NC State's defense has been consistently good, but we still need to see more from this team, so I'm only putting them at number 21, but definitely do not sleep on NC State this year. At number 20, I have Louisville, and I actually moved Louisville up a little bit because they looked very good in Week 1. And with all of these ACC teams going down and the ACC looking weak, Louisville could step up and become a top team in the ACC, and I wouldn't be surprised if they actually did. I might have been sleeping on this Louisville team this offseason, and I moved them up a little bit to number 20. The offense looked really good in Week 1. Tyler Shuck might be better than I think, and if he could stay healthy, this offense has potential because they do have some guys at wide receiver. Last year, they struggled to move the ball offensively against good teams, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took a step forward in 2024, and they definitely have great defensive upside. At number 19, I have Kansas. I know I can trust that Kansas offense. They have so many guys, and this is a scary Kansas team because Lance Leipold is a great head coach, and they have their quarterback in Jalen Daniels back. They also have a really good secondary. The front seven has some question marks, and that's what's keeping me from ranking this team higher, but they could win the Big 12 if Jalen Daniels stays healthy. They have a really easy 2024 schedule, and I do think this is a really good Kansas team. And this is the most talented roster Lance Leipold has had. So I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas had a really good 2024 season. At number 18, right ahead of Kansas, I do have Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State did not really struggle against South Dakota State. The defense was a little bit questionable, but they won that game by 20 plus points. And Oklahoma State is definitely a favorite in the Big 12. And I do think they have a small advantage over Kansas. They have a very experienced team. They have multiple offensive linemen back from last season. I think they actually have all 5 starting offensive linemen back. And they have the best running back in the country, Ollie Gordon. The defense is a concern, and they have been an inconsistent team. But I trust Mike Gundy as a head coach, and they have a lot of guys back from last season. And this is the team that went to the Big 12 championship game last season as well. So I do have Oklahoma State at number 18. And another Big 12 team, I have Kansas State at number 17. I'm really high on this Kansas State team. They've been a consistently good team under Chris Klieman, and the defense is always pretty good. But they have a great backfield with Giddens and Edwards, and they have a young quarterback on the rise in Avery Johnson. We will need to see more from Avery Johnson, so that's why I dropped Kansas State a little bit more. I believe last week I had Kansas State in my top 15, but Avery Johnson did not look great against UT Martin, and there were some other teams that impressed in week 1 over Kansas State. And I think we need to see more receivers step up for Kansas State. But I trust their defense, and they should have a really good rushing attack this year. So I have Kansas State at number 17, and I'm still sticking with them to win the Big 12 in 2024. But that could definitely change soon. At number 16, I have Michigan. I'm really not too high on this Michigan team. They have a big quarterback problem to figure out. And I'm not going to lie, they did not look that good at the line of scrimmage against Fresno State, and they only outgained Fresno State by like 20 yards. And I really think all of the teams ahead of Michigan could beat Michigan if they played on a neutral site field tomorrow. And I might even drop Michigan lower if they cannot figure anything out offensively. Their defense is really good, but they did not look good against Fresno State. So I did drop Michigan to number 16 for now. But if they can impress me against Texas, I will move them up more next week. At number 15, I have LSU. And this is a tough one because I could totally have LSU a lot lower in my rankings, maybe even outside of the top 25. It's hard to take away a lot from that USC versus LSU game. Did the offenses take a step back? Or did the defenses actually take a step forward? Or maybe the defenses are the same, but the offenses just are not clicking on all cylinders yet. We really don't know, but the fact that LSU and USC both only scored in the 20s in that game, it makes me confident that LSU and USC possibly took a step forward defensively, at least a small step forward at the very least. Like I said, there's still a lot more we need to figure out about LSU and USC, but the offenses have been consistently good, and Lincoln Riley offenses are never below average. They're not even average, they're always really good. And I will talk about USC in a second, but I have LSU at number 15. And right now, I'm just going to assume they took a step forward defensively, and the offense just took a small step back. But maybe they're going to be an all-around better team this year. And right now, I'm going to say LSU is a top 15 team. At number 14, I have Oklahoma. Oklahoma is another team we need to learn a lot more about because they did not play a good team in week 1. And they have a lot of new faces offensively, and they have a whole new starting offensive line. And there's still some questions they have heading into the SEC. Will their defense continue to get better, or is their defense not what we expect it to be? Right now, I'm going to roll with Oklahoma being at number 14. I do think they will be a really solid team, but they have a brutal 2024 schedule, and it's going to be a tough path to the playoffs. But Oklahoma could definitely beat just about any team in college football if they played on a neutral site field tomorrow, and I'm confident about that. I think Brent Venables has this team heading in the right direction, and Oklahoma has been one of the best teams over the last 20 years if you look at their records. So I'm going to stick with Oklahoma at number 14 for now. At number 13, I have USC. Everything I said about LSU could be said about USC. I think it's more realistic to think that these defenses took a step forward, and USC could be a dark horse in the Big Ten. Miller Moss looked really good for USC, and Lincoln Riley offenses are always consistently a top 15 or even top 10 offense in the country. And if the defense can at least be average, this is easily a top 20, top 15 team, and I have them at number 13 for now. At number 12, I have Utah. Look, I'm not as high in Utah as most people are, but I'm going to buy into the hype a little bit because Kyle Whittingham is a great head coach. The defense has been consistently good, and Cam Rising is back at quarterback. So right now, I have Utah ranked as the highest team in the Big 12. I think if they played any team in the Big 12, they would beat them on a neutral site field tomorrow. They aren't my pick to win the Big 12 as of now. I do have Kansas State winning the Big 12, but like I said, that can change soon. And right now, I do have Utah at number 12. At number 11, I have Missouri. I had them in my top 10, but a couple teams passed them. I'm still really high on Missouri, but there are some questions defensively because they lost a lot of guys defensively, and they lost their defensive coordinator, Blake Baker. They have the best receiver in college football, Luther Burden, and they have a great group of wide receivers as well as the quarterback, Brady Cook, back. I definitely think they could have a case to be a top 10 team, but I only have them at 11, and that's because I have Tennessee at number 10 now. This is not me overreacting to the FCS games last weekend. Even before the season started, I was going back and forth on Tennessee and Missouri. But just seeing Nico be comfortable in that offense reminds me of how good this Tennessee offense can be this season. And they also have a defense on the rise. Let's not forget what this Tennessee offense did in 2022 when they had the #1 scoring offense. I do think Tennessee is a top 10 team, and I do think they are a little bit better than Missouri. This could totally change after week 2. Tennessee plays a solid NC State team, but right now I'm going to stick with Tennessee at number 10. I think this team is set up to take a step forward in 2024, and I think they have a great quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. At number 9, I have Miami. The more the offseason went on, the more higher I got on this Miami team. And after watching Florida State play in week 0, I moved Miami up to number 11 after week 0. But now I've moved them up even more to number 9. And I'm really buying stock in this Miami team, and I continue to believe in them even more every week. I've been watching Cam Ward since his time at Washington State, and I knew he was going to be a difference maker for this Miami team. They have great defensive talent. They have one of the most talented rosters in college football. They have invested so much money into NIL and the portal, and they have top 10, top 5 recruiting classes just about every year with Mario Cristobal. I think Miami is the certain favorite to win the ACC this year. And they looked very legit against Florida, and that's why I have them above Tennessee and Missouri at number 9. On number 8, I have Penn State. I was expecting them to win and cover against West Virginia, but they looked even better than I thought they would look. The defense will be a top 10, maybe top 5 defense, and I'm certain about that. But the offense showed some promise with the new offensive coordinator, and they had some explosive plays. We'll see more from them when they play actual good defenses. West Virginia is not that good of a team in my opinion. I think they're a little bit overrated. They won 9 games last year, but they did not have a tough schedule, and I don't trust Neil Brown as a head coach. So I was expecting West Virginia to lose to Penn State, but I was still impressed with how dominant Penn State was in that game. But my opinion on them didn't really change that much. I still think we need to see more from the offense. But for now, I do have them at number 8. At number 7, I have Notre Dame. It was a great win against Texas A&M. They won the game 23-13. The defense looked very good. They legitimately might have the best secondary in the country. The front 7 was also pretty solid as well. All around, they have a top 10 defense. They should also have a great running game with Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Love this year. But the thing that keeps me from ranking them a bit higher is the playmakers they have on the outside. Because I'm going to be honest, I didn't see many playmakers emerge for them against Texas A&M, at least at wide receiver. And when they play the super talented teams above them, I do think they could struggle. There's still time for them to improve offensively, and we still have a lot to learn about this Notre Dame team, but for now I have them at number 7. At number 6, I have Oregon. I definitely dropped Oregon in my rankings, but not as much as most people have. I'm trying not to overreact to the week 1 games. We've seen these types of games more than people realize. Georgia only beat Kent State by like 17 points in 2022 and went on to win the national title. In Oregon, they struggled against Fresno State a couple years back, and they went on to beat Ohio State. And of course, how could we forget Alabama struggling to beat South Florida last season? The Oregon-Idaho game was similar to the Alabama-South Florida game, and Idaho is not a bad FCS team. Idaho is actually one of the top-ranked teams in the FCS. No, that doesn't justify Oregon only beating them by 10 points. I'm just saying I'm not going to overreact, and I do think Oregon is going to bounce back and have a really good year. But I did drop them a little bit. And at number 5, I do have Ole Miss. I do think Ole Miss could match up with Oregon, and because Oregon looked terrible against Idaho, I am ranking Ole Miss ahead of Oregon for now. This Ole Miss offense is going to be one of the top offenses in the country. They have a lot of guys back from last season, and they have the number 1 transfer portal class in the country. Jackson Dart and Trey Harris are going to go off this season. But I also think the defensive line is going to take a step forward with guys like Walter Nolan and Princely U. This is a team that should be a lot more competitive with teams like Alabama and Georgia. Ole Miss could beat anybody in the country last season outside of the powerhouse programs. But this is a really good Ole Miss team this year, and do not sleep on Ole Miss. Ole Miss definitely has a realistic shot at winning the SEC in 2024. And at number 4, above Ole Miss, I have Alabama. I trust Kalen DeBoer as a head coach more, and this Alabama roster is extremely talented, and they looked really good against Western Kentucky. They shut out Western Kentucky 63-0. Western Kentucky isn't a terrible group of 5 team. They have Jalen Milroe back at quarterback, a guy that I think is going to take a huge step forward under Kalen DeBoer. We'll see how the defense looks, but we know how Kalen DeBoer offenses are going to look. Kalen DeBoer has been a winner everywhere he has gone, so I definitely have Alabama in the top 4. At number 3, I have Texas. Another team that looked really good against a group of 5 team and a solid group of 5 team at Colorado State. I'm not going to try and overreact to those types of games because teams like Texas and Alabama are just going to dominate group of 5 teams. That's just how those games go. But Colorado State is a solid offensive team and Texas held them to 0 points. This week they play at Michigan and I expect Texas to win that game by double digits. Texas is a team on the rise with head coach Steve Sarkisian. They have a lot of guys back from last season and I expect that defense to take a step forward. And of course they have one of the best quarterbacks in the country back in Quinn Ewers. And they went out and picked up incredible playmakers out of the portal like Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, and Matthew Golden. This is just going to be a really good all-around team, and they are definitely a top 4 team. I have them at number 3. And at number 2, I have Ohio State. I think you can make a case for teams like Texas and Alabama ahead of Ohio State because Ohio State still has more of a quarterback concern, but Ohio State is an elite all-around team. They probably have the best defense in the country this season, and they have elite offensive playmakers around Will Howard. They also have a great backfield, probably the best in the country with Judkins and Henderson. This is a really good Ohio State roster. It might be the most talented in the country. So I do have Ohio State ahead of Texas and Alabama. But at number 1, I have Georgia ahead of Ohio State. I think Georgia and Ohio State match up very well with what they have on the rosters. These are both elite teams, but Georgia has the advantage at head coach and they have a better quarterback. And they already proved how dominant they can be when they beat Clemson in week 1, 34-3. And that was a good win because at least Clemson is a solid Power 4 team. And Georgia dominated them. Someone needs to step up and prove that they can beat Georgia outside of Nick Saban and Alabama. And Nick Saban's not even the head coach for Alabama anymore. So right now, I think the obvious number 1 team in college football has to be the Georgia Bulldogs. They have the head coach, they have the quarterback, and they have the elite defense. So I do have Georgia at number 1. But anyways, that is going to do it for my week 2 top 25 rankings. Let me remind you guys to like the video and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. And if you guys love college football, then you'll love this channel because we upload a ton of college football content and we basically cover everything on this channel. So definitely consider subscribing and also consider checking out my socials down in the description below. But that is going to do it, guys, and peace out.